Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 24. In this episode, I will be reviewing UFC 282. There is a lot to talk about on that card, and also Bellator 289 was this weekend. And speaking of Bellator 289, we have the victorious Kamaka III on the podcast this episode, and the full interview will be exclusively on the KO Podcast YouTube channel. Ring that bell. All right, let's start this show off with UFC 282. This card had all finishes except for the co-main event and the main event. Personally, I think that is a good thing that the judges only got to score 2 fights. Unfortunately, those 2 fights were the last 2 fights of the evening. But let's start out with all of these finishes on the card. Kicking off the card, we had a bantamweight matchup. We had Cameron Simon taking on Steven Kuslow. And Cameron Simon gets the TKO finish in the 3rd round. He moves to 7-0. Moving on, we had a featherweight bout. We had TJ Brown versus Eric Silva, and TJ Brown gets the submission victory in the 3rd round. Moving on, we had another featherweight bout. We had Billy Cortillo taking on Alexander Hernandez, and Billy Cortillo gets the TKO finish in the 2nd round. Billy Cortillo had a massive cut on his upper eyebrow that was leaking really bad, but he fights through that cut and stops Alexander Hernandez. If you didn't already know, Billy Cortillo has that dog in him. He is just such a scrappy and tough fighter. Moving on, we had a middleweight bout. We had Chris Curtis taking on Joaquin Buckley. I still do not understand why this fight was so low on the card, but this fight was entertaining all the way through, and Chris Curtis gets the KO finish in the 2nd round. Buckley was throwing a lot of strikes, but Chris Curtis, man, his power was put on display. He threw significantly less than Buckley, but his shots just seemed to cause more damage. So Chris Curtis keeps his momentum high. Obviously, he was coming off of a loss, but now after this big win, he is back on track. And speaking of back on track, we had a middleweight bout. We had Edmund Shabazian taking on Delici Lumbaglu. I apologize if I butchered his last name, but Edmund Shabazian gets the 2nd round TKO finish. Man, what a big moment for Shabazian in his still very young career. I mean, he was coming off of 3 straight losses, and as I said in the previous show, this was a crossroads fight for him, and luckily for him, he gets the victory, and so finally he has some momentum going into his next fight. Moving on, we had a heavyweight bout. We had Jardinho Rosenstrike taking on Chris Daukaus, and this fight ends in 23 seconds. Rosenstrike hurts Chris Curtis with a jab on their first exchange, and it was all downhill for Daukaus after that. Rosenstrike just pounced on him, and he got the quick finish. And in the preliminary main event, we had a bantamweight match. Raul Rosas Jr. taking on Jay Perrin. Obviously, Rojas Jr. is just 18 years old, and he was 17 years old when he earned his contract on Dana White's Contender Series. And Rojas Jr. gets the 1st round submission. Very impressive win for this young fighter. Jay Perrin, a veteran mixed martial artist who has been in the UFC for a little bit. Rojas Jr. made it look easy. Obviously his grappling is on another level. I still think that the UFC should not rush him. He is still, as I said, 18 years old. He's got so much potential, and sky's the limit really for this young man. Now, moving on to the main card. The first fight was one of my most highly anticipated fights on this card. We had a featherweight matchup. We had Bryce Mitchell taking on Ilia Topuria, and Ilia Topuria gets the second round submission on Bryce Mitchell, but Topuria really messed up Bryce Mitchell, all throughout this fight. On the stand-up, Mitchell was really damaged and bloodied, by the end of this fight. And Topuria just showed that his striking is on another level, and also his grappling is very good. I mean, to submit Bryce Mitchell, that is a huge accomplishment for your grappling resume. I mean, he hurt Bryce multiple times on the feet, knocked him down. Bryce Mitchell, he is tough as nails, but, a person can only take so much damage, and then, he gets dropped again. Topuria goes down to get the submission, and that was that fight. Big statement for Topuria. Personally, I feel that he is going to be a champion one day, whether it's featherweight or at lightweight. I mean, this guy is really just a special fighter. He just has this it factor about him, and he moves on in this featherweight division. Moving on, we had a middleweight bout. We had Darren Till taking on Duplessis, and Darren Till gets submitted by Duplessis in the third round. What a weird fight this was. In the first round, Duplessis took down Darren Till at will. It didn't even look like Darren Till trained any grappling for this fight. He was so easy to take down for Duplessis, and Duplessis is not a grappler, but he showed off that he can bring it to the ground, and obviously he gets that third round submission, which was really surprising to me. Darren Till had a really bad first round. He starts to rally back in the second. In the first round, I thought it was going to get stopped. The ref was super close to stopping that fight. Darren Till obviously had one of his hands trapped, and Duplessis was really trying to get that finish. Darren Till's eye was basically closed after the first round, but as I said, he did rally in the second, and in the third, it looked like he could get this victory, but the tables turned really fast, and Duplessis gets that third round submission. So huge win for Duplessis. I'm not really sure what the UFC is going to do with Darren Till at this point. Is he going to try to drop back down to welterweight, or is he going to stay at middleweight? We will see. In the next fight, we had a catchweight bout. We had Santonivio Ponzinibbio versus Alex Moreno, and Ponzinibbio gets the third round knockout. I mean, it was a brutal knockout. Ponzinibbio lands a powerful and clean shot on Moreno's chin, and you could just tell by his face that he was not conscious anymore. He was frozen like a statue, and another punch sends him flying to the ground, and that fight was over after that punch connected. Big props to Santonivio Ponzinibbio because he was down 2-0 in this fight. His corner tells him, you got to get the finish in the third. He goes out there and he gets a big finish over Alex Moreno. Much respect to both of these fighters. This was a short notice fight. That's why I was at catchweight at 180 pounds. Much respect to Alex Moreno for stepping in on such short notice and taking on a very tough opponent in Santiago Ponzinibbio. Now let's move on to this contentious co-main event. It was a lightweight bout. We had Paddy the Baddy Pimblett taking on Jared Flash Gordon. And before I get into the fight, let's just talk about Paddy Pimblett's entrance. he had the blackout treatment. Both fighters did. And man, his entrance was really cool and spectacular. You don't see a lot of fighters captivate an audience like that before the fight. But let's get into this actual fight. Paddy Pimblett did not have a good showing. Jared Gordon was piecing him up in the first round. I felt Jared Gordon won that first round very, very clearly. Paddy was taking a lot of big shots, and I hate how he has his head so straight up. He's so straight, and his chin is just up in the air. Paddy's corner was telling him to tighten everything up, but man, he's got to tuck in that chin, because he was eating big shots from Jared Gordon in the clinch specifically. But man, Jared Gordon was on top of him that whole first round. The second round was, in my opinion, a little bit closer. I thought that Paddy may have stolen that second round just because I believe he had a takedown at the end of the second. But then in the third, Paddy probably had his best round in the third. He maybe gets that third round, but not a unanimous decision victory by any way of the imagination for Paddy. In my opinion, if there was going to be a unanimous decision, it should have gone to Jared Gordon, not Paddy Pimblett. The only way that I can see Paddy winning this fight is by split decision. And he got a unanimous decision victory. I'm not really sure what the judges were looking at. It was really surprising when they read a unanimous decision win for Paddy. Everybody was surprised, apparently except for Paddy. He said that fight wasn't even close. I disagree with him. That fight was super close, and he almost lost that fight if it wasn't for the judges scoring that fight in a very particular way. There is an underlining judge that I'll talk about a little bit more, but Doug Crosby, he goes and he is in Connecticut for Bellator. He flies across the country to Las Vegas, and he is one of the judges assigned to this event. Really doesn't make sense to me how you fly across the country and you're in a good state of mind to call a fight, but we'll get more into that. So Paddy picks up a contentious, unanimous decision win, but his stock in my eyes goes down. He seemed to have a lot of trouble with Jared Gordon, and I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if Paddy fights down in competition after this fight. It was just not a great showing by him. Moving on to the main event, this was for the vacant light heavyweight title, and we had Jan Blachowicz, the former champion, taking on Magomed Ankalaev, and this fight ends in a split draw. Not the outcome that anybody wanted, especially the UFC, because they want a champion in the light heavyweight division. Again, what these judges, what are you looking at? I do not understand how it's a split draw. The obvious winner in my eyes was Magomed Ankalaev. I believe he deserves to be the light heavyweight champion. He fought through, the leg kicks that Jan was really implementing in this fight really hurt Ankalaev's legs in the third round. Especially, I thought this fight was really, really close to being stopped because Ankalaev was. You could just tell that his leg was really giving out. But Ankalaev, he fights back in the fourth and fifth round, puts on a strong showing, and he doesn't get the win that I think he deserves. But the UFC obviously is moved on from this because literally minutes after this main event was over, Dana White announces at the post-fight press conference that UFC in Brazil is going to be headlined by Glover Teixeira and Jamal Hill for the vacant light heavyweight championship. So the UFC has moved on pretty quickly after this fight, and I just feel bad for both of these fighters because Magomed Ankalaev absolutely got screwed over. He should be the champion, and he's not gonna have the title that he deserves. And who knows when he's gonna get another shot at this title. So this light heavyweight division, it's been a mess really since John Jones left it. The championship has changed hands quite a bit, and obviously Yuri Prochazka injures his shoulder, so that's what started this whole title being vacated. So there is a lot of questions to be answered in this light heavyweight division. Now moving on to Bellator 289. Bellator 289 took place in Connecticut at Mohegan Sun. The prelims had a lot of action, so let's get into it. Michael Lombardo gets the KO victory. Really entertaining fight. Both guys kept it standing. And of course, we had Kai Kamaka III taking on Kevin Boeheim, and Kai Kamaka gets the third round TKO victory. I was on my feet rooting for Kai Kamaka the whole time. Again, congratulations to Kai Kamaka. Really good performance. Of course, he is going to join the podcast a little later on. Moving on, we had Christian Eccles KOing Pat Downey. Obviously, Pat Downey, a decorated collegiate wrestler, but Christian Eccles gets the upset KO and a big win for Eccles. Moving on, we had Chris Lencioni taking on Cody Law, and Chris Lencioni gets the split decision victory. Moving on, we had Jill Willis getting the unanimous decision victory over Kyle Crutchmere. And in the final bout of the prelims, we had Elara Joanny taking on Denise Kiesholtz, and Joanny gets the split decision victory. That's two big wins in a row for her. This decision was a little bit questioned, I believe, by the broadcast. It was definitely a close fight between these two women, but Joanny gets that decision nod. Moving on to the main card, kicking off the main card, we had a middleweight bout. We had Anthony Adams taking on Dalton Rosa, and Dalton Rosa gets the unanimous decision victory. Another good showing by Rosa. He definitely proved that he deserves to be in this top 10. Right now, he is ranked top 5. So, he's probably going to keep his place at number 5. Moving on, we had a Bantamweight Grand Prix matchup. This is the semi-finals. We had Magomedov taking on Patchy Mix, and Patchy Mix gets the sub win over Magomedov. Patchy Mix put Magomedov to sleep with a really good submission. Patchy Mix is dangerous, on the ground. So it's going to be interesting to see him in the championship fight against, his opponent. I'll talk about that after we talk about the main event. And then in the co-main event, we had the former Bellator flyweight champion Juliana Vasquez taking on Liz Carmouche, who is the champion. These two fought once before, and Liz Carmouche got the TKO finish. It definitely was stopped a little early, but Vasquez was definitely in a compromised position. So obviously these two women duked it out for a second time, and Liz Carmouche gets the submission victory over Juliana Vasquez. It was some type of arm submission, I believe, because Vasquez came out of that tap out, holding her arm. So definitely a good stoppage, and this time the stoppage left no doubt in anyone's mind. Liz Carmouche is still the Bellator Women's Flyweight Champion. And now we move on to the main event. We had Danny Sabatello taking on Rafion Stotts, and Rafion Stotts gets the split decision win over Danny Sabatello. I don't know how it was a split decision. I felt that Rafion Stotts did enough to get the unanimous decision. Doug Crosby, of course, the judge in question in the UFC event, for those last two fights, he wasn't alone in that Paddy Pimblett fight, but, definitely a lot of questionable scorecards. He gave Sabatello a 50-45. In his eyes, Sabatello won every single round of the fight. The other two judges had much better scorecards, and those both luckily scored for Stotts, because if Stotts got robbed, that would have been even worse than what happened. I mean, still that shouldn't be a 50-45 scorecard. Every time Danny Sabatello got in, he was in control. He just kind of laid there, and I mean, if it was a wrestling match, yeah, he definitely would have pinned Stotts for the 1 count, but you got to throw strikes on the ground, you got to throw elbows, you have to try to inflict as much damage as possible on your opponent when you're in those dominant wrestling positions. I understand control time can be factored in to the scoring of the cards, but I mean, he just wasn't doing anything. He was just really laying on top of Stotts. Stotts definitely mixed the martial arts way better, and thankfully he got the split decision nod. So now it is going to be Rafion Stotts and Patchy Mix in the Bellator Grand Prix final, and that fight is also for the interim Bantamweight Championship. I cannot wait for that fight. It should be interesting to see these two clash. Now let's move on to UFC Fight Night, Cannonier versus Strickland. All right, this card is the last UFC card of the year 2022. I cannot believe the year is already almost over, but this is a pretty good card for the last card of the year. There is a lot of fun fights. The main event does have some stakes on it, so that always makes it more interesting. Let's get into this prelim card. A fight that I want to point out is a flyweight bout. We got David Duvarak taking on Manel Cape. And Manel Cape, he's coming off of 2 really good wins. So this is definitely a flyweight that could burst onto the ranking scene in early 2023. So keep an eye out for Cape. We also have a welterweight bout. We got Brian Battle, the tough season winner. He was picked last, and now he's on a streak. He had a brutal head kick KO in his last fight. He's taking on a very tough opponent. His name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, but he is 19-1, and so that is not an easy opponent for Brian Battle. Moving on, we have a lightweight bout. We got Rafa Garcia taking on Hazir Mishatate, I believe that's how you say his last name. I apologize if I butchered it, but Mishatate is coming off of a very brutal KO in his last fight, and Garcia is a UFC veteran, so very excited to see how that one goes. And the next fight is a bantamweight matchup. Saeed Nurmagomedov. A lot of people forget about him in this bantamweight division. He is not related to Khabib Nurmagomedov, but Saeed Nurmagomedov is a really good bantamweight fighter. He's very well-versed in the stand-up. He has a lot of spinning attacks. A very exciting fighter to watch, so don't miss that fight. Another fight, we got a middleweight bout. We got Julian Marquez taking on Darren Wynn. This is going to be a very grinded out fight. Both of these guys are tough as nails. Both are hard to put away. So this should be, a bloody and just a grinded out fight. That's what I'm expecting out of these two. The next fight is a welterweight matchup. We got Jake Matthews taking on Matthew Semmensberg. Obviously, Jake Matthews showed, his stand-up skills in his last fight, getting the knockout win. And Matthew Semmensberger, he's had multiple quick KO finishes in the UFC. So this is definitely going to be, my pick for, it could be fight of the night. But someone I feel is going to sleep in this fight. And the final fight on the prelims is Cheyenne Vlismas taking on Courtney McKenna. These are two prominent women's strawweight prospects. Cheyenne Vlismas, I watched her since she was on the Contender Series, and man, I just love her fight style. I've been really high on her ever since she has came into the UFC, but she's facing another highly touted prospect, Corey McKenna. So this should be a really fun fight for both of these two young women to prove themselves. Now moving on to the main card. Starting that off, we have a middleweight bout. We got Cody Brundage taking on Michael Askazuki. I'm sorry, I probably butchered his last name. But that should be an interesting fight. And then right here could be another fight of the night candidate. We got a lightweight bout. We got Drew Dober taking on Bobby Green. Man, I am stoked for this fight. This is just gonna be an exciting fight. Both of these guys always bring the fight. They're veterans of the UFC. This might be fight of the night if that other fight that I mentioned is not. Moving on, we got Alex Carceres taking on Julian Arosas. This is another fun fight on this card. Both guys are really flashy in their styles, and they're unpredictable. So this should be a really fun fight. Like I said, so many fun fights on this card. Moving on, we got a flyweight bout. We got Amir Abizi taking on Costa, and Amir Abizi 15-1. Let's see if he can keep that momentum going into the new year. And we got a great co-main event fight. We got a lightweight fight. We got Arman Sarukian taking on Damir Azamagolov. And Arman Sarukian, man, he is definitely one of these young lightweights that I have my eye on. I mean, Sarukian, man, he's in his UFC debut, I believe he went against the current UFC lightweight champion Islam Makhachev, and he lost in a decision. But it just showed how much high level mixed martial arts this guy is capable of. I mean, his grappling to his striking. This is another lightweight that, I can see him as a champion one day. But Damir Ismagulov, he's 24-1. He's not going to be an easy out. But I just see so much potential in Sarukian, and definitely I can see a future championship in the near future. In the next year or two, he can definitely be in that spot to get the belt. Moving on, we got a middleweight main event. We got Jared Cannonier taking on Sean Strickland. Cannonier, I believe, is the third ranked middleweight in the UFC, and Sean Strickland is number 7. Strickland coming off of a loss to the now new middleweight champion Alex Pereira, and Jared Cannonier also coming off of a loss to Israel Adesanya. And both of these guys looking to get back on track. I think I'm going to take Jared Cannonier in this fight. I just feel like he has more power to his punches. And Sean Strickland, I feel, is more of a volume guy. He's going to get you out of there with just a barrage of strikes. And, Sean Strickland is very good at getting guys up against the fence and teeing off on them, but Jared Cannonier is such a strong guy. I just feel like he's not going to let Sean Strickland bully him around. And, Sean Strickland, I hope in this fight that he doesn't just stand there and, make it a striking match. I would like to see Sean Strickland, try to get the fight in the clinch or to the ground, try to mix it up instead of just standing there solely. But yeah, I got Cannonier winning this fight. I'm not sure how yet, but definitely Cannonier is my pick for this fight. And now let's hear a little bit of my interview with Kai Kamaka. If you want to see the full interview, it is exclusively on the KO Podcast YouTube channel. And here it is. Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, and I am joined once again by the victorious Kai Kamaka III. Just a little quick overview. How are you feeling after that win?
Feels good. Feels good to me, but it feels good to win. Feels good to just not, yeah, get the finish. But the wins are short lived. I already got back in the gym, and yeah, I'm ready to start my my journey to my next fight or my next camp, healthy. And that's all you can ask for.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to start by talking about your leg kicks and how effective they were. It seemed like you really kind of honed in on your opponent's lead leg. So just kind of talk about that.
Um, I leg kick a lot. Um, I leg kick a lot. So like if you watch back to like started when I started working at Coach Eric, started calf kicking a lot, and the and it, I don't know if you watch like the Danny Chavez fight. I pretty much leg kicked him till he was done, like pretty much didn't want to fight anymore. And yeah, so and then I don't really watch too much tape of my opponents. Um, but my cousin that was something that he kept repeating to me like in the last 2 days leading up. He was like, that Kevin stands kind of tall, and just take out his lead leg first, or take out his legs first, and then he just that was something that kind of stuck like he said it more than once, so I knew that was something I should have did and I had to do.
And also talking about kind of your movement and your speed advantage, I noticed that you were pretty way faster kind of on your in and out movements than your opponent. Did you? I know you say you didn't watch tape, but after at least like a round, did you kind of already know that you had that advantage in speed?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have the advantage on speed on most guys, just because I came up from 135, or I not came up from 135. Yeah, I did, but and I just my lifestyle is living a lot more athletic than a lot of these guys, so I feel I was gonna be faster. Um, um, yeah, I feel like I was gonna be a lot faster than him, so um, that was that and so I wasn't too worried about his speed after.
And going into the third round, he obviously knew that he was down 2-0 and he came out pretty fast. Just kind of talk about how you worked through that.
Um, on the third round.
Yeah, when he
Um,
just kind of came out, kind of gave it his all for the last,
yeah,
like for the first minute or so.
yeah. That's kind of funny because my corner was saying that he's gonna come out hard in the first minute and that he's gonna give everything he has, and he did exactly that. And so I was just letting him like get out some energy.
And that is going to do it for this episode of the KO podcast. To stay up to date with the podcast, follow me on Twitter. Look up the KO podcast with Tyler Russo, or you can look up at KO pod with Ty. And also, we have an Instagram page, the KO _ podcast. And also, like I mentioned earlier, we have a YouTube channel. Just type in the KO podcast just the KO podcast with Tyler Russo. And that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. Stay safe. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.